In this episode, we're going to be designing our first crewed moon lander, sending a relay network on its way to Minmus, and Val and Bob are going to be our third set of Kerbals to move beyond the Van Kerman radiation belt, while I try to figure out how the Kerbalism fuel cell works. And all of this is coming up right now. Alright, let's take a look here at what we got in the build list. I got an empty base, so I definitely want to build something to go into there. And we're rolling out the Minmus relays, and you know what? I'll explain that when we get to it. Remember though that what this thing's about is really, I really got to get to Duna. I got a rapidly closing Duna launch window. I would want to see if I can get something to at least, I would like to just orbit Duna, even fly by Duna. But my issue is antennas. The only antenna is the most powerful antenna I have right now. Well, it's not much. I'm so unfamiliar with this tech tree. Where are my current batch O antennas? They're always down in this range, are they? I mean, I got the I really don't have much better than Communitron 16s and that HG5 relay antenna. That's really all I got. But if I go, I think it's here. The DTS M1. I need to get myself to here. I'm up to a tier 2 research and development center, so that shouldn't be a problem. But what I gotta do is I gotta unlock miniaturization first. And that'll be fun. That gets me all of these deployable science experiments, which I've yet to really play with. And then I'll go for precision engineering, which gets me the DTS-M1 antenna, as well as a better relay antenna, but really it's this one. And a couple of these with a tier 3 deep space network upgrading the tracking station actually is serviceable around Tuna, we'll put it that way. It won't be the best, but it should work. And what's nice is I can upgrade the tracking station while it's en route, so I don't need to get that done before launch. So that's my goal, is really just to go down that. So for that I just need to get some science. Now we did manage to polish off a couple of contracts at the end of last episode, so I can pick up some more contracts. Should be thinking about science while I'm... Oh, more Kerbals. These rescue contracts. Okay, okay. Dabbles Kerman. Lieutenant Oh, wait a second. These are really tempting to do. You only have an hour to do it. Alright, I should have thought about this. Lieutenant Dan is in space. Shoot. Alright. I need to get Lieutenant Dan down to the... Okay. Is that true for all the time? Okay, I need to keep... I didn't realize this with these rescue contracts, but you need to load your Coast Guard rescue officer, and my rescue officer is Lieutenant Dan, and I have Lieutenant Dan in space with Bill on Kerbin Station with the plan of keeping him up there for about another 15 days. So what... Okay, I gotta do a bit of a crew rotation. Lieutenant Dan needs to stay on the surface. Okay. And what about... Alright, I'll have to take a look at this. There's another, I think another one who's a rescue officer. Okay. So there we go. We got to do a rotation of some kind. So I can't do that one. Let's see here. Not in there. SETI contracts. Alright. Got Eve and Duna. Yeah, I want to get this involved. There's still got a lot of time to accept these. Man-moon... Let's face it. Man-moon landing. I want science. I think I can do this. I think I can get this organized. So let's do that one. Manned moon landing. Yep. We'll accept that. And we can accept one more. And I was looking at this last episode, wasn't I? This prolonged space flight. This is, I think, 60 days in space. Alright. We'll work on that, and maybe we'll have to set up a bit of a crew rotation. Just can get hooked in with the crew rotation for Lieutenant Dan. I'll have to think about that, but maybe what would be a good thing to build then. I'm actually debating about what I should do. And what would be easiest to do? The easiest thing is to push one of my already purpose-built crafts. That would be easy. Just to grab, like, for instance here, something like the P1B. What is the P2? Oh yeah, that's right, that's Val's mission. That's the mission to do a 45-degree inclination change, which I botched and redesigned the whole thing. And in fact, that's going to be the highlight mission for this episode. You're going to see its entirety of that mission. But right now, I want to take a look at the P1B. There it is. Do a crew rotation. That would be easy peasy to do. But I want to design myself a moon mission. Yeah, so let's start new. We're going to get ourselves to the moon for science. Now what I do have now is I do have the 3 crewed pomegranate capsule. So I can get 3 Kerbals now to go. That'll be great, but what I soon realized was kind of a limiting factor here are actually my orbital engines. I am really starved for decent orbital engines. I don't even have the Terrier. That's sort of my go-to small orbital engine, and I don't even have that unlocked yet. I do have the rather similar but smaller Pug engine, but that only provides a measly about 25 kilonewtons of thrust in a vacuum. The other thing I'm limited in is parts that are bigger than 1.25 meters in diameter. My only 2.5 meter diameter part is the hitchhiker can, and even on the 1.875 meter front, I'm pretty limited, especially when it comes to fuel cans, and certainly no engines. So this turned out to be something a little bit trickier to design than I thought it was going to be. I ended up going with a trio of 24-77 Twitch liquid fuel engines. These are radial engines, and then that way I can get my, well, still just the small landing gears to work underneath that and not have them sit on the bottom. I can't go with any of the bigger engines. And with the sort of limited amount of orbital engine, I had to go with a 2-stage rocket. You know, where the upper stage is going to be handling the final stages of the landing and then getting itself back to Kerbin, and then there'll be a transfer stage which will not only do the transfer but the capture and a decent part of the descent as well. And with those I can put on some better in-space orbital type of engines. I went with a trio of the very familiar torch engines which work, which I've been using a lot on my rockets. I really do like these. And then I end up, you know, once this was sort of done, I mean, it's taller than what I would like, but I'm now getting myself sort of into the ballpark where I'm like, yeah, I think this should work. I should be able to do this. And of course, now it's time to get into Kerbalism. I had to make sure to keep my Kerbals alive and all the different things you got to think about with Kerbalism. One of which was redundancy, especially when it comes to life support. So I had to start adding on some more stuff. And that meant that the 1.25 meter stock service bay wasn't going to nearly be big enough to hold that stuff. But thankfully, Universal Storage gives us this beautiful little cylindrical fairing, and it's configurable. You can change the height on it, so it's not only pretty but functional. So that serviced that very, very well. Also had to think about electric charge and electrical usage, which has been the bane for me on a number of my missions. And once I started getting into it, I realized that the biggest culprit for electrical usage is going to be this materials bay. It uses 2.04 units of electric charge per second, and it takes 20 minutes to run a single experiment. So you got to think of either doing one of two things. Either put on the electrical generation that you would be required to cover the 2.04 units of electric charge per second and all the other crap you got to run on this thing, or put on a stack of batteries. And I went with the stack of batteries. That just seemed like the simpler solution. I now have these bigger batteries. I got to get at least 2,500 units of electric charge onto this, but didn't turn out that was too hard to stuff that in there. And then that simplifies the generation piece of it too. You know, I just got to make sure I'm on a full charge of batteries when I run the materials bay. And then of course came more tweaking. I really want to make sure I get the most work out of that transfer stage that I can. I want to be able to jettison it shortly before making the landing. And of course you had to make it look a little bit prettier, changing textures, playing with lights. But with this thing, Especially with how kind of tall it is, I definitely want to put this thing to the test. So I got out the KRASH simulator, put myself in orbit about the moon, and did myself a test landing. Cut. Stage. Here. And we now have more engines. We're going to get this off of here. Rotate. Okay, we're going to kill off our horizontal. Oh my gosh, this thing is a little bit... There we go. I want to kill off my horizontal speed here. Engines. Ah! Alright, don't land on a slope. Let's restart. You know what, though? I don't know. I'm going to call that a win. That's just... I mean, it's not a win in real life, but in real life, I'm going to be more picky about where I put this down. I think it would have been better off over there where I was landing before. Okay, let's see. I got 1,141 meters per second left at delta V. Yeah, that'll do it. That's enough to get myself into orbit about the moon, provided I'm pointing upwards at the time. And get back to Kerbin shouldn't be an issue. Alright, this is doable. So now all I need to do is get this thing into low orbit about Kerbin. Now, at 15.6 tons, this is my largest payload by far to date, so, well, we're going to need a new booster, so you know what that means. More design and more testing in the KRASH simulation system. And don't worry, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that, because you're going to be seeing this in an episode in the not too distant future. But what you're watching here is actually my first test, my first simulation, and to be honest, it flew much better than I thought it would. It's flying on 9 engines and a combination of swivels and reliance. Some of my most powerful engines that I have, believe it or not. Man, I gotta unlock some bigger engines. I'm not saying it didn't go without incidents on this first test, but all of them were sort of trivial things that should be readily fixable, and of course we'll clean this up and make it look a lot prettier. But that's all for later. Right now, let's launch those Minmus relays. So what we have here is not 1, not 2, but 3 satellites all packed into this fairing, and we're going to put together a communication network around Minmus. Now, this might seem a little... I don't have a contract for this, but this is actually connected to a mistake I made towards the end of last season with, I believe it was the Minmus 2. What ended up happening was, it was in orbit around Minmus, it was collecting science, I was making a plan for it to land, once it was done collecting all the orbital science that it could. But I got into playing with the automation features that are in Kerbalism, one being that it was raising and lowering the antenna when it didn't have a signal, and I misunderstood what that was saying. And of course, if you lower the antenna when you don't have a signal, then you'll never get a signal because the antenna is lowered, and it remained lowered. So the plan here is to put in this communication relay into an orbit that is low enough that just the built-in antenna in the probe body will be able to pick up the signal from the relay. And did a little bit of calculating, worked on figuring that out, and I got a math video if you want to do this kind of stuff for yourself. I think it was around 165 kilometers that the relays have to get away, to be able to pick it up. So the plan is, I'm not going to cut it right to the wire, so I'm going to put these relays into a circular orbit about Minmus of 150 kilometers in altitude. That should allow that satellite to pick up the signal. Then I can raise the antenna, and then I can do the landing. Thus, this is actually about 2 missions built into one, really. This is not only going to set up some relays, it's also going to save a previous mission in which I botched. Okay, that's good. We're going to be launching 6 degrees towards the north, so switch to 0, and we're going to launch 6 degrees to the north. We're going into an 80-kilometer orbit. That should do it. What did I do? Oh, yes, of course, you have to run said launch program. Oh, how many times I do that. Boom. There we go. Alright, and while I was doing that time warping, it's now nighttime, but oh well, such is life. And you can see, I don't know, I'm losing track of the names of all of my boosters. Well, we got a quartet of BACC Thumper boosters. It's clearly pushing on just 2 of them, and then I'm suspecting it's going to go to the other. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. And then what's down here at the bottom? The Reliant engine. Is this my first use of a Reliant engine? It just might be. It is so funny how the Reliant engine is like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I got such a powerful motor. And like, I don't know where it is on the tech tree when you play in the stock game. It's like 3rd tier or something like that, 2nd tier. Alright. Boom. There we go. And of course I'm launching into an inclined orbit and launching at the equatorial ascending node for Minmus's orbit, so that the plane of my resulting parking orbit will match the plane of Minmus's orbit, so that I can do the transfer out to Minmus without having to make any kind of plane changes on the way, thus saving me fuel. So with a little bit of extra planning, you can save yourself a rather expensive inclination change. Okay, we have just set up our circularization burn. 778.2 meters per second with still 961 meters per second left in our lifter. So clearly that shouldn't be a problem. You can see the 3 satellites all stacked one on top of each other using a pair of these HG-5 high gain antennas. If you are putting relays around the moon or Minmus, that is the configuration I would recommend. 2 of these serve that purpose very, very nicely. And cut. Nice orbit. Did a good job this time, Scripty Script. Okay, our program is ended. We are going to stage this, and I'll worry about deorbiting that in the future. Let's plan our trip to Minmus. So, see how that works? See how my parking orbit here is nicely in the same plane as Minmus. So basically now I can just take a look at where's Minmus and plan that ejection burn appropriately. And I want my closest approach to be as close as I can get to, and this is by design, 150.1 kilometers. Because that will be, that's the eventual orbit that I want. Dial this back. And I shouldn't get too picky at this stage because this will undoubtedly be requiring some further tweaking as we come in. But of course, all of the fiddly stuff around Minmus is pretty cheap. There, I'm gonna call it at that. That's good enough. We'll figure this out. So that's gonna be my burn to get out there. Let's take a look at what I have no idea how close this is gonna get. I think it tends to slightly overcook. Nope, that would be a slight undercook, I believe. Okay, program is ended. Let's just see if we can not. That's a significant undercook. Here it comes. Overcooked that a little bit. Whatever. I'll fix that later. But that correction isn't going to come for several days, so it's going to have to be for a future episode, because right now Val has a training mission that is literally on its way rolling out to the pad. Alright, so here we have the P2. Mission 2, MTS2. This is a second try at a mission. Now this is a Kerbal Academy mission. These are missions where you do specific tasks and you gain experience. So this isn't about gaining money or gaining science or gaining reputation. This is about gaining experience for your Kerbals, and specifically this one requires Valentina Kerbin to be on board. So there she is, there's Valentina, and she needs to make a 45-degree inclination change while in orbit about Kerbin. Now, I have already tried this once. I thought I was being clever, and I unclevered myself, or over-clevered myself, however you want to say it, because what I did is I thought, oh, you know what, I'll send them out towards the moon, I'll use the moon to affect my inclination. That turned out to be more expensive than I thought it was going to be. Either way, it didn't work, because as soon as we left the Kerbin sphere of influence, it didn't register the change had been made. You have to make the change while in Kerbin's sphere of influence. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to push this out to a nice high orbit, about the same orbit as the moon, about 12,000 kilometers, and then we're simply going to make an inclination change out there, because making the inclination change way out at Apoapsis, as far away as you can from Kerbin, will make the change cheaper. And in fact, once I did the math behind it, that was a cheaper way to go. So as you can see, Valentina is aboard. Also aboard is Bob, because Bob is still level 0. Bob has yet to do an orbit of Kerbin. So I stuck Bob on board because I need him to be level 1. I don't think there is much in the way of science to be had on this mission. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Let's see, P2 mission. Well, we just want to get the details of this. Keep track. Okay, there we go. Our boosters. Now running on the Kodiak engine. This is, you know, I was talking about the Reliant, but the Kodiak engine is my most powerful engine, and I thought it was a 1.875 meter part, but it's clearly a 1.25 meter part. I don't know. I've been away too long. And I think the Kodiak engine comes with that Making History DLC, if I'm not mistaken. Alright, we are at Miko because we hit our target Apoapsis. Get ourselves up to fairing separation. Now, if I recall correctly, I think I've had 2 missions go around the moon, so I might be getting these mixed up. But I think this is the mission that ran into radiation storm issues. Oh my gosh! That was a ton of solar panels. Did you see that? I definitely saw that. Oh my gosh. That was a whole pile of solar panels shattering. Okay, okay. They have this one. So the one, okay, that's alright. I think I know what happened is I think I had the staging and the deployment happening too close to each other. I have to look at the script and find out exactly what's going on with that. So we ended up busting one of our solar panels, but I still got one left. That should be more than adequate. I hope it's more than adequate. This mission has had too many things going wrong with it. Alright, circularization is now plotted. There we go. Burn is complete. Yeah, not the best orbit. Sometimes it does a great job and sometimes it doesn't. This one's 80 by 85. Not quite sure why. Okay, we can now lose our booster. And there we are. We are now on our little ship here. And everything should be goody good. So we need to make an inclination change of 45 degrees, but we don't have the delta V to do it here. I am pretty sure. So all I'm going to do is prograde and burn. I just want to make sure I do not encounter the moon. Let's turn off all of the distracting information. No, we will, if I do this now, I'm just going to miss the moon. So we will just point prograde. Come back to this view, and we're just going to burn. This should be fine. So up we go. And we're going to burn into our Apoapsis is at about 12,000 kilometers. This is not vital that this is precise by any means. Don't think there is any science tucked in here. in the slightest. No, I do not think so. Though I got a little smarter. Remember, I ran into electricity. There's monopropellant, so from now on, every single crewed vessel will have monopropellant on it. It serves two purposes. Number one is it is the EVA propellant for my Kerbals. Without monopropellant, you can't EVA. And number two, there is a monopropellant fuel pump in there, so that if for some reason you need a backup source of electricity, you can run the fuel pump and it will run off of that monopropellant. This is a small pressurized can of oxygen to keep them alive. Yeah, there's not anything of any other interest in there. Okay, 8,000 kilometers. 10,000. 12,000. Good enough. Alright, so what we'll do... Actually, the solar panels, I think, are very nicely exposed right now, so I don't have to worry about that. Is out towards here. Whoop. We're going to set up a maneuver node. Add a maneuver right at apoapsis. And we're going to make ourselves a 45-degree plane change. And how we're going to measure that, I think the best plan is to set the moon as a target. There's too much stuff all close together here. There we go. Set as a target. I really don't care about selecting the moon. Stop it. Alright, and that gives us these ascending and descending nodes. And so if I just turn this to 45 degrees or a little bit more than that, everything should be good. So, let's put this on here and do... And there we go. That's 48 degrees. That's going to be fine. I want to make sure my periapsis is still out of Kerbin's atmosphere, which it is. One thing I want to draw attention to with actually maneuver node evolved, I should draw attention to. It's something to be aware. It's pretty nice. Notice that all I was doing was hitting the normal increment. I was just going up and down by normal, and that was affecting, whoops, let me hit the right buttons, and that was affecting my inclination. See how that affects the inclination like that, right? Oh, I'm going by hundreds. Let's calm down. Right there affects the inclination, but really as the projected orbit starts to tilt, really what you need to do is actually start putting in more retrograde as well as normal to keep your periapsis at the same height. I'm sure many of you have experienced that, but notice that it's putting in that retrograde component automatically for me by me just hitting. That's really nice for, I think it's nice for it to do that. So that way you don't have to sit there fiddling with a retrograde prograde component just to make a plane change. It does that for you automatically. Anyway, there we go. That should be it. That is a, what do we got? 136 meter per second burn. And what do we have left in the can? We have 827 meters per second left in the can. So clearly that's not going to be an issue. So what we're going to do is set an alarm for that. That's not coming up for another day. So alarm clock. Add alarm. 5 minutes. Boom. And yeah, nothing else is going to be happening until then. So why don't we stick with these folks and do some time warping. I'm hitting the wrong button to do time warping. My life. All right. We are definitely going through, should mention this with Kerbalism. What are the radiation belts? I think you push 1 on the nav, on the... Yes, okay, so we've already passed through one radiation belt. We are now very much into the next radiation belt. Should be telling us up here how much. Here we go, we're starting to get radiation warnings right here. You can see the rads per hour climbing. Thankfully, we will not spend too much time in this radiation zone. We're coming out of it now, but oh, whoa, batteries are almost empty. Why are because we are, oh my golly. Okay, That's okay. We are in the eclipse a little bit too long. But you know what we're going to do is, where is that fuel pump? That is it. That is a life support module. Let's click out here and let's turn on our monoprop fuel can. See how this works. So we got a fair amount of monopropellant, not a lot, but our electricity charge is going low. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this on. Bum 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 bum, and it's running, and we are now generating electricity. We are using up. Oh, I don't even see the monopropellant going down. Should also be using oxygen. I'm not sure if it draws the oxygen from the oxidizer. I would think it should draw it from... What does it draw from the oxidizer or draw from the oxygen tank? Probably from the oxygen tank would be my guess. So that's good. We can keep the lights on while we are... Oh, wait. Oh, it's not generating too much. Okay. It's not... Okay, stop. What can I turn off? Humidity control. Stop. I just noticed that lights. Obviously the lights can go on. Maybe we can't keep the lights on. Oh my gosh. What else can I turn off? Don't want to turn off the scrubber pressure control. We can turn that off. Alright, so still learning. That didn't seem to make much of a difference. Scrubber. Scrubber makes a difference, but I think probably turning off the scrubber is a bad idea. Oh my gosh. I lost my... I thought I had that selected too. Oh, for goodness sakes. What do we got here? There. I thought I had this pinned, but clearly I unpinned it or something. Danger. Life systems are now off. But the monoprop is running, but it doesn't seem to be generating electricity. So what am I doing wrong? It runs on monoprop and O2. I have both of those two things. Okay, so that's why it wasn't using up resources, because it wasn't working. Same vessel interaction needs to be on? No. Okay, so my monoprop fuel cell, I thought I was all... but it is not working. Oh! Now I don't have... I just realized something. No. I just turned this dump to nitrogen. We are now using up oxygen. I don't know what the dump does. Turn dump to water. That now is not generating electricity. Yeah, it is a little bit. Okay, dump nitrogen and water. Dump none. We are now generating a tiny amount of electricity, so depending on what I dump, now we're generating electricity. Dumping nitrogen. So I don't know if I understand that. I turn dump to nitrogen, and we're now generating electricity. Let's put the lights back on. I was fiddling around with scrubbers and stuff. Let's make sure that's still on. It is. Okay, we are now generating electricity, so we're good, and I can see the sun's about to come up, but what's this dump nitrogen thing? I don't see nitrogen being dumped. There's something about fuel cells I don't understand. Maybe it generates something when you burn. I mean, clearly it would. Yes, of course, when you burn something, you're generating something. So maybe you need to dump that. So maybe what you're generating is nitrogen and water. Yes, that makes sense. When you burn stuff, you almost always generate water. Anyway, I can turn that off. Now that we're in the sun, we should be good now. Whenever you burn stuff, you always produce water. Maybe when you burn monoprop, you also produce nitrogen. So what you need to do is dump those things that you're burning for it to work. That makes some sense, I think. I think I might have figured it out. Okay, so with the monoprop thing, you got to make sure to dump whatever it is that the monoprop is producing. But we seem to be good. Our very minor crisis is now over. And we're nicely charging up thanks to that solar panel. And we're no longer getting radiation warnings, which is always good. Now the one thing to be aware of, we'll look at our next radiation zone. We're outside of that belt, but this belt here, you can see how it points away from the sun. So this is sort of the shadow, kind of a magnetic shadow behind Kerbin. And once we exit out of this, the radiation level doubles because you're no longer being protected by this. But it doubles to not a really dangerous amount. If you were going to put a station out there and have Kerbal stay out there for weeks or months or years at a time, you definitely want to give them some sort of radiation shelter. But for these folks, see, there our warning just came on because we just left. So we're now 0.02 rads per hour because we're outside of that zone there. All right. Hopefully that's the least. There's always something. Warning, MTS probe batteries. Oh, I know what that is. Oh, shoot. Okay. All right, that's my stupidity. That was the booster stage from this thing that I completely forgot about that I was supposed to deorbit, but forgot to deorbit, and while we've been fiddling around out here, it's been orbiting Kerbin and ran out of batteries because it has no generation on it. So I won't be recovering that. We're going to get a moon eclipse, a lunar eclipse, very briefly there. Oh, just earned 4.5 credits due to the sight experiment above Minmus. I love these little surprises that come up. That you're sitting there going, I don't know what that is. Alright, we are 5 minutes away from our maneuver node. And everything is going fine. Crossing fingers. So, we are going to actually use our X-Man script again. So we are going to... I think we have to get back onto the ship. Switch to 0. No, switch to 1. The ship is 1. KSC is 0, and we want to copy from 0 our X-Man script to here. Boom. And we're gonna run X-Man. There we go. Sorry, Valentina. But I so do like my execution scripts. Here on the nav ball you can see how the burn's not purely normal, how like there's some of the component is retrograde, because you gotta burn between the two to get this to work. Alright, should be seeing the countdown coming up here. There we go. Oh, it looks like we are right on the same. The game and my execution script. Okay, that was the periapsis dipping into Kerbin ever so slightly just for a moment. I hope that doesn't mess this up, because if it does, that's not fair, because it'll come back out again. There it goes. And there we go. Alright, we have gone down far enough. It's finishing off. We final inclination of 47.5 degrees. Program has ended. Well done, Valentina. The final thing we want to do is just deorbit ourselves. So we're just going to point this to periapsis. We're going to do a little bit of burn. Put this down to, I don't know, what do I usually do coming back from the moon? Maybe like 35 degrees? 35 kilometers? Sure. 32 kilometers. There. Alright, and again, we want to make sure our solar panel, now that we're in a wacky inclination, I'm losing the galaxy nebula in the background there to sort of get myself there, and then we'll turn this so the panel is going straight up on the screen, and that should be nice exposure for that. Excellent. Okay. All we got left to do is to ride this down and finish this mission off. You know, I have so much Delta V, I probably could have done... Why should I? I wonder where we can expect to come down with this. Ooh, we might end up on land. Well, we're gonna see how it goes. They did that coming back from Apollo, right? They just went, oh, we'll see where we end up. It is a roly-poly kind of potty, so the only thing I'm concerned about is that we get on a hill and really kind of go for a tumble. That would not be the best. Okay, we shall stage. There we go. SAS off. And this thing should orient itself into a retrograde orientation. One thing I do have are these separatrons. That is part of the launch escape system. But they're still on there. So if worse came to worse, maybe I'll actually put them down here for now. If all of a sudden I don't quite like where it looks like I'm coming down, I could just fire them off. It's not a huge thing, but I mean it is something. Just don't want to land on this hill. That's the only thing now I'm concerned about. We are clearing this hill for sure. But maybe once I've cleared this hill, we'll fire off these retro rockets. Oh, now I'm thinking we might not clear. Okay, let's... Okay, let's fire them off. Arrest some velocity. Now I'm almost guaranteed to come on that hill. That wasn't very smart. Oh, let's put this on terrain. I probably was going to clear the hill now that I'm looking at it. And doing that, I was going to probably land in this sort of grassy land area here. Now it's looking like I am pretty much forced myself to land on the hill. I want to try and carry this as much as I can. That was dumb. 7 kilometers. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Should be okay. The worst thing would be like to land at the top of like here and just go for a nice tumble all the way down. Well, you don't think about too much with the Gemini, Apollo / Mercury style capsules, but these little roundy Sylvia ones, yeah, they roll. I think we're okay. Might be able to collect a surface sample or something like that, Bob. Might have a reason to have brought you around after all. And... touch. Beautiful. Now, it's not doing a crew report, right? Oh, it is. It's doing a crew report. And Bob was able to get an EVA report and a surface sample, and we happen to be in the grasslands, and this all really just served to remind me how I really need to get off my back end and get in some of this low-lying surface science fruit. That's going to be for the future, and of course we recovered 99 science. That is, I believe, a node, pile of parts. Yeah, Valentina is now at level 2. She gained 6 experience points for completing that assignment. Awesome sauce. Okay, and I believe I can get me a node, and we talked about this at the very beginning of the episode. I eventually need to get this one. Yes, for the DTS M1 antenna, so definitely I'm going for miniaturization. That gets me these new deployable science equipment, so that should be fun to play with anyways. Anyway, that's going to be a couple of days to research. I am most certainly going to go to Kerbal Construction Time, look at my upgrade points. I am definitely putting that towards the VAB, and putting that towards the second bay, that's where I'm getting the most bang for my buck. So into the second bay that goes. VAB, build rockets faster, and that also opens up a contract slot for me, and said contract slot I've already decided is going to be filled with, if I go to SCANsat, there's this doing altimetry scan of Duna. I'm just thinking what I should do is build this Duna craft even though I don't have the antennas yet, because once you build it, you can edit it just to add the antennas. So I should get this thing building now, right away. So, altimetry scan of Duna, I'm going to select that because that contract is going to be my Duna-ish contract to do. And we're going to close that one off. And I think that's also going to close off the activities for this episode. So I thank you for watching and hope to see you again next time.